Evening, folks. It's Ron Motta for the first show that we've actually done this year for Activate Worcester. In fact, I've got my designer shirt, my Activate Worcester designer shirt, and I'm showing off my pipes today because it's 50 degrees out there and enjoying it. And we have my co-host, he's been with us this often, Jay Givan. He's joining us. And I have to tell you, whenever Jay is with us, he doesn't wing things. He comes prepared to a degree that you can only dream about. For example, guy, you can't see this, but he's got charts. He's got graphs. I mean, it's unbelievable. Altogether, he came with like 8 pages of notes, charts, graphs, etc. So what you don't hear out of his mouth is, in my opinion, he lets the facts do his talking for him, which is terrific. And there are so many different things we could get caught up on, and with 27 minutes to go, it's a good idea for me to shut up and kind of turn it over to Jay. But basically what we're going to focus on, which I think you might find fascinating, is where are the schools? Where are the schools in Worcester? How are they performing? How are they performing against state averages, against a comparable city like Springfield, what the numbers are indicating? And very, very importantly, we all used to love getting report cards in school, right? Some of us did, not me.
Not me.
And, yeah. And to make a long story short, part of what he's put together is a report card for all three, for the state, for Springfield as a point of comparison, and then, of course, for the city of Worcester, our city. And to put it in perspective, just as kind of an overview, the city budget is, well, okay, roughly 2/3 of all your tax dollars, it's 60-something%, go to the school department, which means the teachers, the upkeep of the buildings, the administrative folks behind it, and all the other goodies that go with it. So if you think that it's boring to know these things, you're the one that's having the money withdrawn once a month, whatever, to pay your taxes. You should know what's happening with your dollars, how efficiently are they being spent, and if you don't think they're so good, maybe, just maybe, you should be contacting, especially now that they've reorganized the way you've got the school committee set up, maybe find out who is in your area that's running the schools, because it's not the way it used to be, where it was one school committee that pretty much ran the city. Now it's been broken down into different districts, which in a way could be valuable if you use that as an opportunity to get on the phone with these people and say, whoa, you might be saying you're doing just a marvelous job. Or you might be saying, not so good, guys, and you got to get your act together. And as I said, almost 2/3 of your tax dollars are supporting this. And I understand the children are our future. I've heard that a few thousand times. Well, if that's the case, how are we doing with these children, these stalwarts that are going to go forward and be the next generation, taking Worcester into the next century and beyond, you know? Well, as an overview, that's what I'd like you to be aware of. And now I will turn it over to my buddy Jay to put some meat on the bone with this thing. Go for it.
Well, we're back for more in 24. So the first piece of meat is, as it's been rumored is there's about a $25 million budget deficit, which some people say taxes are too low, we need more money to fulfill that $25 million void. Mm-hmm. The other side of the political aisle is, well, you want too much money for the money we have available. You need to cut spending. I was back at some town meeting maybe 15 years ago, and the superintendent of that school system said, just because we have the largest municipal budget doesn't mean there's the most places we can cut from. And it makes total sense. You can have a very efficient, every penny is accounted for budget in a big budget, and then your local, something, or DPW. In Worcester's case, they can't even plow the roads. They could be swimming in money, theoretically.
Understood.
So, and I understand it. The better the school system, the better property values. So it's nothing you can do about the quality of student. I understand that. And this isn't so you need good teachers. You need to pay teachers well enough. And it was always, they may have made less, but they make up for it in their pension. Well, now they have the salaries and the pension, which is why this city has, as of 2 years ago, a $1.2 billion unfunded liability, which is insane. The budgets are going up, spending is going up, and in the school department's case, boy, there's a lot of stuff here. I started with 2015. We're going into FY25, so taking 10 years. I'm not trying to, do anything nefarious with the numbers. 10 years is a good span. There's a website called U.S. Inflation Calculator, and you can put in any dollar amount between 1913 and right now, and it automatically calculates what that dollar would be worth in those given
Plugging in
parameters.
the rates of inflation,
Right.
et cetera.
So I took the 2015 budget, which was roughly $389 million, with a student population of a little over 25,000.
Stop. Guys, remember those numbers because they're pretty relevant. Numbers of students, 25,000 and change 10 years ago. And it was costing us as taxpayers, let's call it, rounded up, 389 million for 25,000 students. Go ahead.
All right. So you put in the numbers, and out comes what the budget should be going into this year.
Plugging in inflation.
Right. Inflation accounted, and including all the Biden inflation and all the inflation in the past 10 years. We should be at a budget of $499.8 million.
So it would have gone up roughly 100 million, plugging in inflation for the last 10 years.
Correct.
Okay.
So this year's budget should be $499.8 million.
Call it 500, make it simple.
Yeah, right, 500 million. 2 years ago, it was already 508 million. Then, 2 years ago. So the bottom line is, over the last 10 years, again, I picked 10 years because it's a decade, an even amount of years. Even with record high inflation under the Biden years, the school budget is outpacing inflation while the student population is going down.
Stop. Again, I interrupted him before, I'll interrupt him again. The population that I mentioned, let me just reiterate it, back in 2015 was 25,000 and change. 25,254 if you want an exact number.
And this is all coming from the Department of Education.
Oh yeah, these are real numbers, they're not cooked. And again, that cost us $389,000 as taxpayers. The current population is 24,350. So, and by the way, that population has been pretty steady all the way through. It's gone up, down a little bit here and there. But it's not like population has jumped to 30 or 35,000. It's basically where it was 10 years ago. In fact, it's less by almost 1,000 students. And you're paying roughly $200 million more for 1,000 less students. Big numbers, very explosive, but how does this compare in terms of the batting averages for the schools. How are they doing against the state? There are standards I know that he has here. Please.
If I were Rush Limbaugh, I'd say like formerly nicotine-stained fingers. Right. Yep. So again, from the Department of Education's website, they have all the information. They have all these graphs.
Which is the source of all this?
Yeah, which is the source of all of this. The state average 3 years ago, in 2021, which is the latest available numbers, 7% of students, and this is for, I think, the 3rd through 8th grade. All the grades are available. I just picked these, and not knowing what the numbers would be. 7% of students are exceeding expectations, 37% meeting expectations, and roughly 56% are partially meeting or completely failing expectations.
Taking it from
That's the
highest
state
point,
average.
the 7% really tells me that in English, 1 out of every 14 kids statewide, 1 out of 14, was exceeding the standard.
Correct.
13 out of the 14 were not exceeding. You heard those other numbers. But that's the state, okay? Tell me about Springfield, which is about very, very similar
So
to
in
us.
Springfield, and you can never have an exact comparison, but Springfield seems pretty
demographically, it's
close.
very similar to
Demographically,
Worcester, yeah.
yes. It's not Wachusett. And the state average salary is $86,000.
Currently,
No, 3 years ago, in 2021.
86,000 then, statewide.
Correct.
So again, if you plug in inflation, you have to assume that it's probably 92 to 94,000 now.
Yeah, give or take.
But those are the numbers I want you to just kind of lock into. Go ahead.
All right, so this is all 2021.
Yep.
The state average, 7% exceeding average teacher salary, $86,000.
Okay.
Okay. You go to Springfield,
Okay.
4% exceeding, and the average salary is $74,000.
Run that by me again.
Okay.
4% in
4%
Springfield
in Springfield,
versus 7% for the state.
correct.
But the difference in cost per pupil was, again, based on 21
Well, the
numbers
average salary,
Yeah.
$74,000,
versus 86 then.
correct.
Okay.
So you can make an argument based on state average in Springfield. The more you pay teachers, the better the education.
But you also have to plug in the fact that the Boston area has always been a lot higher, certainly,
Right,
than
right.
Springfield. But let's bring it on home, as they say. Worcester.
So Worcester,
Yep.
same year, same everything. Springfield 4%, state average 7, Springfield 4, Worcester 3% are exceeding expectations, and the average salary in Worcester is $93,000. Then,
In 21, 93,000.
right? So you're probably up around $100,000 a year for the average teacher salary in the city.
And Boston, which is always, much more
Oh yeah,
expensive.
that'll
than
be
Worcester.
105, 110.
What was Boston again in 21?
All right.
The teachers, they were making,
Like salaries, a state average 86, Springfield 74, Worcester 93.
then,
3 years ago.
yeah,
Yes.
21. So in English, in a much less
So add 10%.
costly real estate market, or cost of living market, which is what we are, much less than Boston, as you guys know, we're still paying basically through the nose based on those numbers. And you're paying through the nose, and at the same token, with a demographic that's not radically different, among other things, from Springfield.
Right. So you're basically paying Boston prices and getting worse results than Springfield.
And 3%, that's 1 out of 33. 1 out of 33 That's insane. It's exceeding expectations. You know what we'll do? We'll dumb it down, make the expectations lower. And this way, bingo, now we'll have, everybody will get a trophy because they were all excellent, and everybody gets A pluses.
All right, so that's on the salary end of things.
Boy,
Now, this is where it gets insane.
more than what we've talked about.
Yeah, so if you're
Wow.
tight on cash, you cut back. Oh, no. We have a fake Hispanic as superintendent, and she's decided in the last fiscal year, FY23 going into FY24, the budget we're currently in, and this is from, as you can see, the 446-page budget that the schools put out. And on page 383, 391 in the PDF, district administrators increased 31% from 23 to this current year. Not salaries. The actual number of administrators increased 31%.
Does it show the actual number of administrators as well?
In certain cases.
The reason I ask, I remember looking at something like this 5-6 years ago, and as I remember, we had roughly 24,000 students, and I believe there were roughly 20,000 teachers. There were more administrators than teachers.
Well, that's become, Mark Levin wrote about that, 7 or 8 years ago.
Seriously, yeah.
That on colleges, there were, in most cases, as many administrators as there are professors. Wow. And this is why the cost of college tuition is, far and away exceeded the rate of inflation.
Well, we're not talking college, we're talking basically grammar school here. And it's unbelievable. Because the thing that's scary about this is that if these kids are not performing well in grades 3 to 8, whatever it is, how are they going to handle high school? And then how are they going to handle college? Again, in Worcester, 1 out of 33 is exceeding, the standard. And
so if you have 1 out of 3%, 1 out of 33 9-year-olds who can't add and subtract, how are they going to do trigonometry or physics or anything else? I won't say chemistry because I was lousy at that subject. It gets worse and worse. So you just dumb things down to inflate the numbers up. So again, there's salaries, and then there's this increase in administrators. And then you think, okay, there might be an assistant principal, there may be, extra nursing, SROs maybe, something. No. And here we go again, in the same PDF for the school budget. So you have
And this is current now.
This is current.
And it's here in Worcester.
Yeah, this is for this budget year. You have the superintendent.
Which you need.
Which you need.
Of course.
You have the assistant superintendent.
Can't survive without the assistant.
Okay, and then you have the assistant to the superintendent. So you have the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and then an assistant to the superintendent.
Yeah.
You have the...
And these jobs are paying, what, $25,000, $30,000 a year? Put a 1 in front of both of them, I'll bet you.
Well, I've heard, and I'll say that salary, you have the quadrant school administrators, and that sounds like it's needed. But...
It's needed to what? Support these young scholars that we have. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I don't want to be facetious.
You have the chief academic support officer. Who knows? But then you have Yvonne Perez. She's the chief equity officer. Now, if you think that's the most woke thing, I would agree with you, because who could ever come up with the position Dr. UQ has.
You?
Yeah, that sounds like the
Who you?
Monty Carson art player's bit. Dr. UQ is the chief people officer. And I've heard she's
You're not
making
kidding.
over 200.
The chief people officer?
Look,
As opposed to what?
you can't make it up. I don't know what she does, but
Well,
I've
she's got a
heard she's
PhD,
making about
so-
200,000 a year.
Absolutely, absolutely. How can you deal with people unless you have a people officer?
So when you're facing a $25 million budget hole, I mean, the first people you need to keep is the chief people officer and the chief equity officer.
Ain't no doubt. Maybe two of them. Maybe that person needs an
Maybe
assistant
each school
as
ought to
well.
have one.
Sure, absolutely. Any other interesting titles in there or what?
No, I mean, everything else you have, like the executive director for whatever quadrant of schools. And that sounds
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
legit. So I sent in a public records request earlier this month. And I first emailed the superintendent, knowing she was not going to answer the full question.
She's busy.
She said, she got back in about 2 hours.
Not bad.
And she said, well, you need to file a request through the city portal, whatever.
yes.
And, totally understandable.
Done.
So I had done that before I contacted her anyway. And my request is, basically, of these people, it's the district leadership, ones that are mentioned, the names obviously, positions, salary, and employment date. And then every administrator, secretary, assistant that falls underneath them. Same thing, salary and employment date. Then as a general question, the number of teachers and the number of non-teachers currently on the payroll. I don't need names and salaries. She sent me, or somebody on behalf of her, sent me a list of general salaries of 2 years ago, which has everybody.
All city workers.
Yeah, and then said, your public records request is now completed.
Beautiful.
So I appealed it to the state, and the state got back that day, said, oh, no. You will respond in full by the 29th of the month.
So we're not
So
there
next
yet.
week.
Okay. Maybe in our next show, we can share what information they've shared with you.
Yeah. Now, you cannot blame Dr. UQ, the chief people officer, for making $250,000 a year. For God knows what she's doing. If she can get it, great. But this is why you need to have Trump elected, for one thing. And we'll segue into that in a second. But the one thing you need to do is apply zero-based budgeting to the budget.
Yeah, right. Like they even know what that means.
Oh, they don't know what it means. Because you need to start wiping out the repetitiveness, the stupidity, the redundancy, and just the natural stuff that kind of gets rebudgeted that isn't even there anymore. And you need to start electing these people out.
Oh, where do you begin? Really and truly, where do you begin? How do you get your arms around a monster this big? A city this size to have $600 million for those kinds of results?
I mean, if they were a business,
Boy, oh
they'd be
boy.
out of business.
Without a doubt. But they don't, because they could just go right back to the trough to get more money, because it's for the dear sweet children. And how many people are making serious money? It's almost like this is a scam. It really and truly is.
When it gets to be pension time, yeah, but you can't do anything until next year's election in 25. But this year, you've got, there's not even a primary season for the most part to talk about.
Got it, really.
I think the last time there were essentially two incumbents was Grover Cleveland.
Grover Cleveland, Alexander.
Yeah, whatever.
If anybody out there knows what my reference is on that.
So Biden, well, Trump will most likely be the nominee. Biden, he could be the nominee. I would assume he will be. I think the Democrats are really stuck.
They're in a tough spot.
I think the left, and you can kind of see how nutty they're getting based on what's happening in this city at city council meetings. But that's another discussion. There's some things being investigated.
A lot of it is based on fear, and that's something
Right.
that
Well,
bothers
if you
me.
can't run on your record, and if you basically have The Walking Dead as a president, what can you do?
The stumbling dead. He stumbled
He
again
tripped
yesterday.
upstairs
yes,
again.
he did. It's tough. It's tough to navigate those things. But he's smart and he's got it going. And there are people out there that are quite happy that he's the standard bearer. His whole approach to this thing is, I'm not Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is the devil. And that's
Orange Hitler.
That's the way we're doing it. And the amount of information that's out there that they should be challenging, because this is what the press used to do. They used to have their hair shirts on against everybody. Let's say it was two parties, they'd be on their butts challenging them for everything that they would do. Now it's a bad job, and it's very, very sad to see it. And when you think about the kind of information that's being reinforced out there, lie after lie after lie, it's very, very sad. And what's happened, in my opinion, not just in politics, but in general life, people are so polarized now. If you go drive on 290 or 90 or any of these other roads, I mean, people are cutting each other off. The way people are behaving now is not good. And rather than people pulling together, we got a lot of stuff going on that's not positive, as you know.
At least with Worcester, we're not Brockton High School.
We're not Brockton High yet. Not yet. Anyway, wow, there's our music. The band strikes up and away we go. Jay, thanks for joining us. I hope you, and this is not really an enjoyable concept to get into this, but it's really important. It's your tax dollars that are being wasted. And again, the good news is you have your own district, people that you can get in touch with to start asking questions about this. It's up to you. Thank you for watching. Look forward to seeing you again at our next show. Thank you. Jay, thank you for joining us again.